And I feel like music has always been this important element in my life because in music you can experience a lot of different emotions, like it can lift you up when you are down. It can when you are not down, you can also like experience different kinds of emotions in music. And there's also a lot of imaginations and space in it.
Welcome to Cultural Collision. I'm EJ.
And I'm Victoria.
In today's episode, we have the pleasure of diving into the multifaceted world of Bufan. From Beijing to Boston, Bufan's journey is a captivating blend of artistic passion and legal prowess. Join us as we explore Bufan's experiences as a corporate lawyer and professional jazz musician, shedding light on the challenges of balancing personal passions with parental expectations and unveiling the vibrant jazz scene in Beijing. Welcome, Bufan.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome, Bufan.
Yeah.
Okay. I know you are a corporate lawyer, a professional jazz musician. I have the honor to listen you play sax before, and you're also an amateur cyclist. So what would younger yourself think of the professions and passions that you have cultivated over the years?
I think it's a really interesting question. I want to actually say something first because we plan to do this podcast maybe like a month or 2 months ago. And I got a little bit intimidated by like the question list because I felt like a lot of questions, like I don't even have the answer myself. And it's really, some questions are quite critical. Like I have to be really critical with myself, with my decisions. And I have this fear of whether this, am I gonna like present like a good whatever podcast? And it's all about the expectations. But like later, I feel like, I don't really care about that anymore. And the fact is, I haven't been talking to you and EJ, who are my really good friends, for a long time. And I think it's just a good opportunity and fun to just catch up. And speaking about all those things you mentioned earlier, I think EJ mentioned a really interesting word, parental expectation. I don't necessarily see my parents planning out all those things for me, except I know they want me to stay on track, like in terms of professional career. I always like to play music. I like to listen to music. I started to play erhu since when I was like 10 years old. And it's relatively late for, Chinese kids to start practicing the instrument because my parents were kind of like worried whether I'm gonna like stick through it. And, like the book education, whatever, like teacher teach you at school is more important than like art stuff. But yeah, I guess I just always liked the music and like cycling. I used to cycle since when I was little, like kindergarten. Like I would cycle around like in the compound with other like friends. And when I look back, when I think about why I started to do cycling, like one day I realized, wow, I'm actually just repeating it's not starting a new like hobby, it's just picking up something that's always there since childhood. Well, speaking about like parental expectations, I think law is definitely not my first option when I like entered the Gaokao, like the college examinations in China. But I guess it's something. Well, I picked French as my like number one interest. I think later, like I discussed with my parents, and we both agreed that law is something that's more practical, and language can be something on the side, just like art, just like sport, other stuff. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So you mentioned that studying law was not your first choice when you began college planning. Did you have another career in mind that you wanted to do? Like, even if, let's say you were to pick French, did you have a career in mind that you would want to take if you had ended up studying French?
Honestly, I don't. That's also like my problem. I don't know about like other kids. I think I saw some like interviews like on TikTok and or online. Like some people really they were really certain what they want to do before like even entering high school or like they have a dream profession. But for me, I didn't really have a dream profession. I tried different stuffs after getting to law school as well, like music, and I spent like a year teaching English before going to the US for a like master's degree. And I also tried, I think, camp counseling with Sam. I tried different stuffs, and I think at the end, I still feel like law is the most challenging. Not saying that teaching English is not challenging because, especially when we're facing with teenagers, but I think I like to work with smart people and I like to work on challenging stuffs. And law definitely gives me that.
So you study at 中国政法大学.
Yeah, I did my Bachelor of Law in China University of Political Science and Law. It's Zhongfa Daxue, and then went to Boston University for a year for the LLM program. Yeah, I think EJ definitely had a special role for my like journey in the US, and also other friends of American friends of EJ. That's another story. Yeah.
So like you study law in China and also in the US. So how did that experience of studying abroad, like while studying compare in the US and China experience your overall, like how you got into the law industry and your just how it shaped you?
I think most people like back in the day when I was in college, they would pursue a master degree right after graduation due to like the competitiveness of the legal market. But whether it's in China or US, I think it's going to study abroad is definitely something always in the back of my mind. But I think that's more determined after I met EJ and all other like good friends back in Beijing. They definitely share the good side of the American culture. And I think back then, like in general, like I think we are all more interested in like culture exchange, and like I feel like post pandemic things are a little bit different, but I think back then like early 2010, I think people are all like from the both side. I would like to like understand what other cultures like, what other people think, how they grow up. And I feel like pursuing a legal degree in the US is definitely beneficial for my career, but it's also a good opportunity for me to really observe the US culture and to understand my friends better in a way, because I was surrounded by these like American friends, including EJ. And like also like when I grew up, it's definitely a lot of American pop cultures are coming to China, and I grew up with like watching Friends, like some TV show that American might not even be considered worth watching, is quite old, but we all like really enjoyed Friends, like etc. But it's definitely yeah, something I want to do to really see the US and experience the culture, immersed myself in the like US culture. Yeah.
Was there anything particularly, because I know Bufan is alluding to the fact that we met while I was a study abroad student at Beijing, and he was living there while he was still a college student. And so, at that time, Bufan's English was not what it is today. He was still learning, we were language partners, and then over the course of talking and getting closer, becoming good friends, English changed, and then we sort of forgot about the fact that we were even really doing the cultural exchange, but it happened so organically. I'm wondering, like, when you got to the US, because I think for you being in the US, that was also a big sense of like independence for you, living on your, like living on your own. I mean, I know you had a roommate, but like you were essentially living abroad on the first time on your own, doing a lot of things on your own. Were there any like big challenges for you moving to the US or anything about US culture when you met it for the first time? You were like, whoa, this is not what I was expecting. This is not what I saw in an episode of Friends, What do I do with this?
Yeah, yeah. Like for the record, my English was not too bad as well because I learned from Eminem and Tupac, and and in terms of difference between Friends, I think it's definitely more diverse than Friends, and I think because I only stayed there, I knew I was only gonna stay there for 1 year, and I know like US is like one of the major topics about like US, something you can't avoid is the racial thing and the diversity. So, and you definitely give me a friendly, I don't know, warning or tip. Oh, like the Americans might not be as friendly as me or Jimmy or Sam or all the like 留学生 you met in Beijing because they are interested in Chinese culture in the first place. Otherwise, you wouldn't be like seeing us. And with that in mind, I think I just decided to take the most of it from this 1 year experience, and I didn't really focus on the racial thing or, like the negative aspects of it. I just try to, I think all my like classmates are friendly, all the people I met are mostly friendly, even though like Boston or Massachusetts is known for something, but I didn't really experience that within that short time. And others, I think, like I feel like you, Jamie, or other like friends, like really prepped me up before I even got to the US. I feel like, wow, it's like I can interact with locals just like back in Beijing, I was already prepared, like well prepared by you. Yeah, basically. Yeah. But there is a really interesting incident because that's something I really thought about because I have cousins who grew up in the US and they are Americans or like Canadian. And I went to the US just without having this minority mindset because I was always the majority in China. Like, we are not considered as minorities. So I feel like I was just more confident or like not really having this internal barriers comparing to some like Asian American. Like I wouldn't be really focusing on like some of the nuance, I guess, like when I was just there for a year. But really one time in Boston, I was in this bar hanging out with my friends and a few Asian American like approached me and we just started talking and one guy literally asked me, oh, like, do you think the status of Asian American would change if China become more powerful one day and we can be just like as equal as whites or the majority in the US? It's really something it's hard for me to respond because I never really experienced like growing up as a minority, and also kind of feel sad like that's something like on his mind, but it's definitely if I'm there like long term, I will definitely take a closer look on these issues. But I think back then I just decided to have a good time and just not really take, I don't know, agencies opinions on like things are not like strongly related to me.
I remember I had a conversation with my friend in the US. She's a Chinese American. I think all of them have this identity crisis. Like by the age of maybe 20s, they realize some of them was born in China, some of them were in the US, right? And they were like, in the US society, most people think they're just Asian. They're like Chinese, they're Asian. They don't think they're the US citizen, even though they are, right? Like that's kind
Right.
of like things like Bufan mentioned. We are never going to experience, even though like we live in like travel to a different country or like experience is never something we can imagine. Can you
Yeah.
tell us a bit more like your role as a corporate lawyer? Because like lawyer is often like stereotyped. Like, what do you think what do you think what are the some misconceptions about the field of law that you feel are important for people to understand?
That's a good question. I feel like whether you're a corporate lawyer or you're a family law, you practice family law or criminal law, essentially you're just using the law as a tool to like solve problems for your client. And law is relatively more complex, so there's the challenge. And as a corporate lawyer or as a lawyer in general, you oftentimes facing difficult, complex, new issues. And like sometimes you're like, a lot of times you try to search for precedent, but a lot of times it's new because each case is different from the other. So you need to have the ability to understand law and to apply law into the individual like scenarios. That's I think takes I don't know like takes really takes experience and I don't know like wisdom. Yeah, because a lot of times other than legal analysis, you also need to have a picture of how to help your client solve the issue better, and that's sometimes not necessarily strictly legal analysis. You have to be a little bit creative on giving like a whole solution to your client. I think that's also very challenging, and I'm still learning till now after 8 years of practicing law.
So it's not just follow by the rules, right? Follow by the book, what the book tells you, right?
The book is very important, but it's also very important to on how to interpret the law itself and how to apply the law to different scenarios.
Switching gears a little bit. So you spent a year in Boston and had a lot of new experiences. Was Boston where you first fell in love with jazz music?
Actually not, because when I think I picked schools from Southern California and New York and Boston. Then I decided to go to Boston because I really like classical music and art in general. And Boston is very famous for its Boston Symphony Orchestra. It's like the top five, I think, in the world. And they also have New England conservatories and Berkeley. It's all really prestigious music school. There are a lot of performances happening every day. So like that's one of the key factors I decided to go to BU. And also like Jimmy recommended that Boston University has really amazing like gym. Like I did visit a few times and it's amazing, but it's definitely not the key aspect. So also my aunt lives in Boston. I feel like it's cool to stay closer to her as well because we never really had the chance to bond when I grew up because they immigrated to the US, I think around the I think around 1989, 1990. Yeah. So it will be cool to stay close to my family as well. Yeah.
What was it that got you into jazz music?
Okay. So that's a really interesting question because I started to play saxophone in 2018. Of course, you're well aware of that because you're my roommate. Sorry for that. And at first, I really didn't like, even after I got my saxophone, I was not really into jazz. I didn't even know jazz that well, but I think it's a few months after I made my purchase I was traveling in Hong Kong for work, and after long hours, I think on a Friday, I decided to visit a jazz bar near my office to have some drinks, apparently. And I remember this trumpeter called Mike something, but he called himself Mike Gillespie, like after Dizzy Gillespie, a famous trumpeter. And it was just like I was really touched by the music, and it's just the music he plays really make me starting to listen to more jazz, because I think it's the improvisational aspects of it, but it's still kind of like remote for me, because the way I learn instrument is always reading the music sheets and practice your fingerings first, and practice from slow to fast, but there's no improvisation aspects of it. So it's actually kind of, that's like a culture shock for me, or that's like the main difference between jazz music and other music I know. And what really helped me to decided to keep learning jazz is actually this person I met in Hong Kong. His name is Sylvester Span, and he's the guy on my WeChat profile. He's one of my jazz heroes. I think it's still like one late night I got up from the office, walking back to my hotel, and he was sitting next to the street and playing the saxophone. And he was playing jazz. And I walked over and I saw there were like two wine bottles next to him. I put like $100 Hong Kong dollar into the bucket. I was like, "Can I drink with you and play a little bit saxophone with you?" He said yes, and I played. He showed me how to play the tunes, and I asked him, like if I play erhu, is a Chinese instrument, like no matter, like I can actually improvise on it. I can play random stuff on erhu, and it's still gonna sound like Chinese music. And I feel like for jazz, it's similar to like African American. It's your music. It's created by you. It's predominantly played by African American musicians. How can I like stand like jazz? I said, it's your music. And his reaction, his response was really touched me, because he said, the music is just there. Everybody can play it. It's nobody's music. I just really like the idea of, jazz is like a platform. Everybody can have their own voice. There isn't everybody can play jazz, and there's not like a defined sound of jazz. Everybody can make your own sound. And that's actually the goal for all the jazz players, to find your own sound, to be unique while playing jazz. And that's definitely something that's very fascinating to me. And I actually try to reach out to Sylvester Span on Facebook. And I think back then, back in 2018, he's already like 80 years old or something. And he didn't respond me on Facebook, because I think he doesn't really use like electronic devices that often. And I just reach out to like a few friends on his Facebook, and I think they kind of got suspicious, like why this Asian guy just like asking for Sylvester Span, while his profile picture was him playing the saxophone next to him, like nobody really responded. But I really wish, I think he lives in somewhere in Georgia, Atlanta. I wish I can go visit to the South someday to maybe see him if he's still around, or talk to his friends, family. I think he's still around, because I still from time to time I search on Facebook, I can see some recent video or pictures from him. Yeah, that's how I started jazz. Yeah.
Mm.
So you also mentioned you play erhu as well. So what other music talents do you have?
If I got really drunk, then I go to KTV and sing some random Chinese song. That's pretty much it. Yeah. I don't know whether that's talent.
Wait, can I say something as a side note? Do you know the song 真圣缘, right? 我祝你是苍苍, right?
Oh
That
yeah.
song is really popular on American TikTok right now.
Oh really?
Oh, why?
Yeah, it's like it's a POV thing. It'll say like POV. It'll say it's so stupid. It'll say something like someone will be driving a car. It'll be like a man driving a car. And the joke is that like men will never ask for directions. Like even if they don't know where they're going, they'll never ask for directions. So it's a guy driving a car and it says ask for directions or sing in Chinese. And instead of singing in Chinese, he sings Jin Sung Yuan. It's so fun. I don't know how this became a meme, but it's like all over TikTok now. All these different scenarios. It's like do your homework or sing in Chinese, and you'll just see little kids trying to sing along to the song. Anyways, speaking of karaoke, that was a song that used to make an appearance at karaoke often.
We should definitely record you when you were singing that song, then we would
Yeah.
have like gone through like as well.
You mentioned something really interesting when you were talking about Sylvester and that idea of jazz is a platform for everyone, and that everyone's ultimate goal is to figure out their way to find their own sound and be unique. And so you've been playing now for around 6 years. Do you feel like you've been able to find your own sound in jazz or your own sort of rhythm and groove in it? Or do you still feel like, or is that something that you constantly are finding and constantly evolves over time?
I think I'm still trying to find my sound, and I think I'm still like an amateur player, and I think like for amateurs or professionals, we are we all have our own like musical heroes. We listen to their albums, recordings again and again. We like our taste kind of like shifts from time to time. So like for a certain period, I really like the sound of John Coltrane, then I imitate his tone. And for sometimes I really like Joshua Redman, and I try to copy his sound. And that's how all these like jazz giants created their own sound as well. They learn from others, they imitate others, and then they have all this like different sounds and concepts within them, and then they finally have this unique, consistent thing called like style, like their own sound. Yeah, I think it's something I pursue, but yeah, but it's also a very difficult thing to yeah, to have your own sound, I guess. For you to have your own sound, it's really meaning that you have something unique. You have something, you sound different from all other people in a good way. Okay. So for example, like John Coltrane's sound, like he was very active during like 1950 to like late 60s, and his sound was still considered advanced and unique till this day because of the tone quality of his sound, because of his concept, his spirituality, and that's something that's requires a lot for a player to have. Yeah, and also like yeah, jazz. I definitely like another thing like jazz. I learned from jazz is actually this concept of spirituality, because I think before this concept is not very popular in China, like spiritual wise, but definitely like if you listen to John Coltrane's music or Fire Sanders, some other like jazz giants, you can actually hear their like inner voices, and it's not like classical music. It's something different, something another layers on top of this.
I want to ask you, so how you pursued jazz impact your life, like both professionally and also personally? Like we're curious to hear how about the ripple effects of your journey through the world of the jazz.
This, I think, similar to like cycling I mentioned earlier, like back in the day, back in 2018, when I decided to started to learn saxophone, I was actually wanting to start a new hobby, but later on I realized it's not a new hobby. I just like to play music. It's just I'm still kind of repeating the things I do like since childhood. Like school is it's the main dish, and like music and maybe some sport, art on the side. And I think now I'm still under the same pattern. I'm still choosing law as my main dish of my career, and I'm trying to like balance and do music and other like hobbies on the side. And I think it's music's definitely something makes my life more balanced, because if it's only law only, like I think that would be a little bit suffocating for me. Like I know there are other like lawyers, they really just like law. And I think for me, I think in the long run, I think I like to have music in my life. It's not necessarily a way to make money or my profession, but it's just something I enjoy doing. And I'm hoping that I can get like better throughout the years. Like my end goal is to, maybe when I retire one day, like my 50s, then I will be ready playing saxophone for like more than 20 years. Then, even though I progress slowly, but I think at that time I'll be like good enough to, go to jam sessions, play at different jam sessions in the world, like in New York, maybe in Paris. Yes, that's something I dreamed of. Yeah.
I remember I heard you play once, and I also saw like some WeChat like moments on the videos you play. I think it's very good. So I wonder like EJ, because like at the beginning when you were trying to study saxophone, you were like roommates. So I'm curious, like EJ. So you've seen Bufan's progress, right? So how do you feel like from beginning when he was like just started and now he's like a musician?
I think it's amazing. It's been so beautiful to watch because people used to ask me like, how do you put up with it? Like I could never live with someone who's learning to play an instrument for the first time. And to be honest, Bufan picked up, I think, the saxophone relatively quickly, right? Like in terms of just like general musicality, I think he has a lot of that. But I think for me, what I remember is that jazz and the saxophone came into Bufan's life, I feel like at a time where he really needed it. I think it was at a time where like law was at some point being too suffocating. I think it was like over consuming his life. And I think that jazz came at a time or the saxophone, I should say, came at a time where he really needed to reconnect with a passion and something that was purely for fun and for joy. And so, like, yes, it was really loud and it was really noisy and it was at all different times of the day because he was a lawyer and like sometimes he had to work until 11, 12, 1 in the morning. And so the only time he could practice was really late at night. And so it didn't bother me as much because as a friend, I saw him finally be happy. It was a while that I hadn't seen him be as happy as he was when he was playing with music. And so like yeah, I had to suffer a little bit, but I'd rather suffer a little bit knowing that he was doing something that was making him happy at the time. And so now to see that like not only does it make it happy, like he can travel and like he gets to play with other really cool musicians, and become more than just something he does for fun. It's become this whole community. To me, it's amazing. I mean, it's exactly what you would hope someone would do with a hobby or with a passion, that it could bloom and blossom into something as fulfilling as it has for him. So as a friend, I'm really proud and I'm really happy. It always makes me happy when I see you post your saxophone stuff. It's amazing.
Yeah, not my boss, not my clients, not my colleagues, but thanks for being supportive. No, just kidding. No.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, it's really really beautiful to see. It's really cool.
Yeah, I think also another layer to music in general. I think um, I don't know like how EJ feel about it because I feel like we share some similarities when we like growing up. And I feel like music has always been this important elements in my life because in music you can experience a lot of different emotions, you know, like it can lift you up when you are down. It can when you are not down, you can also like experience different kinds of emotions in music, and you know there's also a lot of imaginations and space in it. So I think for me, like for some other people might be, you know, like novels, might be like, I don't know, Friends, TV shows, but for me it's always been music. I can listen to music and have my own space, or I don't even have to listen to music sometimes. I can just play in my mind, then I can enjoy the music. And a lot of times I feel like since I grew up, always been listening to music, I think this is also how I save my memories in sort of certain ways. Like I can listen to a certain, maybe a classical piece, then and the music can literally take me back to the time when I first listened to that music, maybe when I was like 6 or 7 or 8, and what that day looked like, what was the weather, how did I feel back in the time. I think that's also like why I still like keep listening to music, because like now I'm also like maybe I'm not writing a diary, but you know maybe today I listen to like John Coltrane's Giant Steps, and I can remember later, oh, what did I do today while I was listening to that music, you know. So I think music is also it's very important for me because it's essential part of my inner space, and it's how store my like emotions, memories, and feelings, etc. Yeah.
You've touched on a lot of different things, and we've hinted at the fact that jazz is more than just the music itself. It has a rich culture and history. I'm wondering if you can share an aspect of jazz culture or history that really stands out to you or resonates with you.
I think if you talk about jazz history, I think if you talk about jazz history, it's definitely strongly linked to African American culture and history. And I think the most fascinating aspects of jazz is still improvisation, but you have to keep in mind how these complex musics were developed. Because at first it's rooted from blues, and it's back in the time of slavery and segregation, and later on jazz was developed in New Orleans, you know, at salons and like other like low-end clubs, like entertaining audience. But later jazz became this very complex, not purely just for entertaining purpose type of art. it's it's the wisdom of African Americans, I think. Yeah, like they refuse to make this genre of music just for entertaining. I don't know, like John's coming to like a salon, or people who want to dance with it, but they want to take this to another level. That's how Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie created this genre called bebop. It's the fast, high tempo jazz music you can often hear in Starbucks. That's like at first, if you're not a jazz listener, you might think, wow, it's just some random notes. Are they really playing something serious, or like improvisation? Are they just like playing BS? But if it's if you play slowly and break it down, you can actually hear or see, if you write it down. The musicians were actually high lining up the chord progressions and creating tensions in a very fast paces. You know, jazz is it's like the main difference between jazz and classical music for me is jazz is more abstract. It's like Picasso. it's not like a classical paintings like, oh, it's very maybe very nuanced in a way, but jazz is more like, oh, red, blue, white, like different color, just jumping quickly, and it's less repetitive than classical music and develops really fast. I think that's something very fascinating about jazz, and how much wisdom like the artists back in the days have to even create this kind of music. And I think, yes, that's something that's really fascinating to me. And jazz culture, I think, like from a lot of musicians' music, you can hear the struggle of African American. Like, for example, like again, John Coltrane is like the hero for all the jazz musicians. He actually composed this music called Alabama after the incidents of like the church bombing in Alabama back in the day. And different from Malcolm X or other like more aggressive Black movement leaders, he chose, it's almost like a eulogy, using his own ways spiritually to try to heal the wound of the people who suffered this tragedy. And later John Coltrane, he composed this legendary piece called A Love Supreme. It's also he created this piece also in the background of the height of the racial tension in the US, I think back in the 60s. And still he's using his own unique way. He's trying to spread love instead of hate. He's trying to offer peace instead of retribution, like revenge, right? He's trying to solve, like absorb all this painfulness, absorb all this tragedy inside of him, and release, like coming out from his music is only love and peace and, I don't know, like kindness. It's really something that's also very fascinating to me, I think. Yeah, so I think that's a little bit off topic, but I think in general, like the fascinating aspects of jazz culture is also, it's definitely how African American created this kind of music back in the day, and how like the music also reflects certain historical like events and backgrounds. And like I think you can listen to John Coltrane's music and compare it to Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream, some sort of that, like you can make that kind of comparison, and you can then you realize, wow, like jazz music is not just as simple as a pop song. It has a lot of weight in it.
Okay, as we wrap up today's episode, we extend our heartfelt thanks to Bufan for sharing his inspiring journey with us. From navigating the complexities of the law to immersing themselves in the rich tapestry of jazz music, Bufan's story serves as a testament to the power of pursuing one's passion fearlessly. Join us next time for another enriching conversation on Culture Collision, where we continue to explore the beautiful collisions of cultures that make our world so vibrant. Until then, stay curious and keep embracing the diverse tapestry of life. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.